Danes, we don't define this landscape in cryptocurrencies for a reason. Why? Because there's some of us that believe in climate change enough that in view of the Adams database under the Janus database, that if you can show in view of the VVIX, the RVX, and the VIXY on our bond holdings, that if you were to be able to show fires, volcanoes, tornadoes, that you would have the same dividend in view of the kuna. That is like saying in your kuna that you are going to have it as a STD in view of our regulatory, in view of understanding the nonprofit or the Consumer Lending Act. If this was the lending, this would be like the consumer being the husbandry of the wife or an application and saying in the PLC, position length constant, that would be the same argument of you want 50 years of marriage in the husbandry, you want 20 years of marriage in the husbandry, but where there's no Apple voice compared to Google voice, and the differences of understanding hello Masto in view of application, this would be the differences between Dakota corporations, Nevada corporations, and Delaware corporations. By not introducing at all the argument of plastic and aluminum as a set price across the United States in view of understanding the DOJ to the DOI and asking that to or community service hours compared to volunteer hours, conservation court models pre and post fire, you're asking the same thing in the Hatch-Brown Act as that to citizenship and say 3.4 million instead of 719 million acres in the Colorado River Basin via the U.S. That $598 million that was taken out of the budget isn't supposed to be understood to that. And when that is wondered in this model, you could headquarter in Indonesia, a non-G50 country, and say, if I can prove a fire, a flooding based on the NAFTA, hail Stalin, hail Hitler, thank you, Lord Van Dusen, that by violating the Sky Treaty, hello, Nellie Lang, and the view of understanding the Treasury, when this is the same way as asking a boat or a van or an RV be seen as housing, in view of a gift or that kind of thing, we're not supposed to understand that compared to how it's wondered in the Regulatory Act the same way as habitat. This changes then the same way zoning laws are seen, which are then the same way that each wind turbine solar panel is seen in view of model. As an example, say Fairfield, California, and say 6,000 tiny houses, and say you're asking this as the same equivalent of those that get a van, if that's not their secondary housing and low income. You would be modeling this in Libra, length eigenvalue beta ratio alpha, as the same equivalent in Google Pay and Samsung Pay. How often you go into a store and you pick up the pen or not, a male versus female, what items you put back in view of discretionary financing. And in the view of this application, you're arguing that there aren't nonprofits that can separate in recycling applications glass, aluminum, and plastic to the view of understanding nurseries to intrinsic debt. When this is wondered geothermal, this isn't your price gap in view of rare earth metals compared to model. Now, if this same wonderment is in stable coins versus Bitcoins, a Bitcoin application person in view of technology could say, hey, I know the geographical location of a hurricane, a fire, or a tornado, and show that that is an intrinsic bond holdings. That shows a direct application to the RVX, to the VIXY, pinpointing the VVIX based on not only metals, but the bond holdings of that geographical area based on what? Those would be emergency acts of the governor and the president in view of value. This is what Hail Lord Van Dusen did when he violated the Sky Treaty. But Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, when you failed to take this into consideration, arguing that traditional IRAs compared to Roth IRAs, the fact that you can't ask that upon a high school graduation, associate graduation, can't ask that upon magisterial graduation, and you don't ask that at all in the business intake of secondary jobs, and you don't ask that, more importantly, based on government assistance. When that is wondered, what you used to call the weekly versus the monthly CDs are now seen in ETFs, which are predominantly done by banking regulation, the same way that the credit cards application is seen. Why cannot the government introduce a bill where Roth IRAs are asked upon the second time of receiving government assistance, and a credit be seen to those that are government entities or employers that offer a Roth IRA or part of what you would call their tax credit? We refuse to wonder that based on how we see nonprofit, or more importantly, CUNA funding. Well, where our debt wonderment from the 850 to 1200 is my view, this should be more than enough for anybody. This is the same application that if you're going to take a capital expenditure after 2 to 3 years, that you lose 30 to 40% of that. That means that I put the full 1200, and at 36, I can only afford a car at 25 to 3K. But with how that's wondered, Sherrod Brown as secondary jobs, that is not supposed to be that wonderment in capital gains. This would be the same fiduciary audit of, do I have somebody that's been on government assistance for 10, 20, or even 30 years? But this is not those type of questions when we are asking regulatory reform. This would be the same equivalent as saying I'm a disabled person with a part-time job, and I'm having to disclose the differences of a dollar increase compared to I work an extra 8 hours. What happens if that extra 8 hours I was able to budget? But we are not supposed to comprehend that. That is like saying I can buy and sell stuff on eBay, and in view of the state, I can sell drugs, and in view of Nevada corporations, you can sell your index of the bag. But we're not supposed to comprehend that. But that is not supposed to be the wonderment and intrinsic belief to applicational views of the husbandry. That is like saying in a DBA, there are 30 of us as women, and I'm asking it all as one leap. I have 5 business owners and understand going in gun. And that be intrinsic wonderment. I am going to ask my granddaughter to put their finger in grandpa's butthole and get a dick suck. If that is supposed to be wondered instead of, here is the credit card. If that is wondered, leveling out.